outcomes. India took 61 years to become a $1 trillion economy. Then it took 7 years to become a $2 trillion economy. And now already there is talk of 5 trillion by 2025. Clearly, if we're going to have growth, it can come with huge environmental issues. We know that. And in order to prevent a lot of these and to have real outcomes which we all can benefit from, we need measurable, time-bound, real outcomes. I'm going to elaborate on that in a bit. So I'm going to give you two examples. One, a good example, and one, a not so good example, a bad example. The first example is the Aadhaar. It was a huge project to get 1 billion people with a unique identifier. However, it was a project that was implemented in a time-bound manner. One of the reasons, I think the most important reason why this was implemented in a time-bound manner was there was a very capable person who was empowered. He was given a cabinet rank, Nandan Nilekani, and he was tasked, there was single point accountability and responsibility to make that happen. He was tasked with figuring out how to get the stakeholders, how to make it a win, et cetera, whether he got consultants from Silicon Valley or from China or India or Bombay or whatever, but he made that happen. The next example is air. As we know, it's been many years, probably 5 since Delhi was the worst city in the world or whatever, and we are still having these discussions, and I don't think we've made any progress. If anything, we've gotten worse. Who is the single point responsible person? I don't know. So as we saw from Ritesh Kumar Singh's discussion, he mentioned many agencies. Today there's some national program, but I don't know who's the one person who's going to make this happen. I think we need a pollution czar or a clean air czar. So there is a book called Measure What Matters. It's written by John Doerr, and John Doerr is actually a VC, and he was one of the first investors in Google. Google uses Measure What Matters. A lot of the principles in the book are used by Google to actually achieve outcomes for the company. Fortunately, we don't have to create a scorecard and an index to measure air quality. We already have an index that is used worldwide. So we are not that different. We should just use what is there and measure progress in a time-bound fashion. Where are we going to be at 1 year from today? What is the project plan? Who's going to make it happen? My husband Sanjay and I were early employees, founding employees of PayPal in the US. And even before $1 was moved, the goal of PayPal was to move $1 trillion annually, $1 trillion US dollars annually. Today, I don't know what, 18, 19, 20 years later, PayPal still moves 600 billion. It hasn't accomplished its goal, but it probably will. If you don't, as a nation and as companies, entrepreneurs, et cetera, or as SEE, set yourself big, hairy, audacious goals, you will never achieve big, hairy, audacious goals. If you don't dream big, you won't achieve anything big. If you dream big, you might fail. You may fail, it's likely you may fail, but at least you have dreamed big, and you may succeed. We all know the cost of delay. I'm not going to go into that, but there is a need for speed. We cannot take time. We cannot go incrementally on issues like air, poverty, because the expense involved is way too high in terms of human lives, even the cost to the nation. So one of the things that needs to be measured is processes, not outcomes. So there was a website. It was called performance.gov.in. I'm not sure why that website has gone away. Maybe it hasn't gone away. It was just not available when I tried. But one of the things that website had on it was the RFD documents, which are the goals of the ministries in India. And if you went and read took any ministry, most of the goals of the ministries were all processes. So 98% were processes and like 2% was outcomes. So it's not a surprise that we are a nation where our bureaucrats and ministers, etc., get excellent ratings. But as a nation, I think we're doing miserably on several fronts. We've done great stuff on many fronts, but on many other fronts, we're doing miserably. Talking about an enabling government, I think this is really important, and it's a pity that most of the government people have left. I hope the presentation will be distributed to them. So I'm going to give an example from the US and PayPal. PayPal had just launched, so before PayPal, the company was called X.com. So X.com was started by Elon Musk, which, and at that time, Elon Musk was not he was like a no-name. So there was a call from the Federal Reserve. This was in 1999. We had just launched like a week before that. There was a call from the Federal Reserve, and basically it said that there was this person, the vice chairman of the Fed, a guy called Roger Ferguson. He was visiting San Francisco, and he wanted to meet Elon Musk. Elon took Sanjay with him. Sanjay was on the management team, and he was like the payments guru. So they went for this meeting. The meeting lasted all of 10 minutes. In the 10 minutes, Roger said, I don't want to know what you are doing. I have signed up for PayPal, and I have moved money. So don't tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you are going to do. First of all, the biggest surprise to them was, how do they even know how do they know that X.com exists? And to that he said, we have staffers. We have young staffers, and they are tasked with finding interesting companies that are doing good stuff for the nation. And this was one of the companies that was brought to him. And he signed up himself. He moved money himself and then requested this meeting. So he said, tell me what you're trying to do. And when they said that we're trying to disrupt the payment space, we have these big plans, etc., he said, you cannot quote me, it's off the record, but you have a friend in Washington. So what happened with this friend in Washington? PayPal and other companies, so there were 69 other companies competing in this space. They were allowed to operate without a license. Banks, Visa, MasterCard, they complained. They said, how are these guys moving money? They're not a bank, they're not a money transmitter. What license are they operating under? And they were told, do not complain, compete. They're doing something good, compete. Now, if PayPal was asked to get licenses in all the states, PayPal would have died a premature death. So what we need is really an enabling government. The solutions will come. As we've heard from many of the speakers today and many of the people here today, solutions exist. There needs to be a person seeking the solutions, and there needs to be an enabling government that says, look, I'm seeking the solutions. I'm getting experts to find out which are the solutions that are going to work for our problem, and it'll happen. So one of the things I really feel very passionately about is that as a nation, okay, never mind. As a nation, we need to demand outcomes. We need to have a movement. I don't have a better name for the movement, India for Solutions, India for Outcomes, whatever it may be called, but a positive movement. So we've all heard of India against corruption, India against rape, India against whatever. We need to have a positive movement, and I'm very, very hopeful of the youth in IIT Kanpur, wherever, because they're very comfortable with technology, and they're also driven and passionate and motivated and not jaded and cynical like people like us in my age. So, and of course, we are happy to help them. But there needs to be a movement India for solutions or India for outcomes, where we're not blaming anyone. The whole motto of the movement needs to be blame no one, inspire everyone, and together we will find solutions. So, I'd like to end with this slide, which basically says that we're a land of 1 billion people. There are 1 billion minds. We can definitely find solutions to many of our problems. Clean air is just one of them. There's poverty, there's bad sanitation, there's many, many problems that we have in the nation. I think we can find all these problems. The time has come to actually find them, to demand them, and it will happen. And to the entrepreneurs, I say that, there is no conflict between doing good and making money. Dream big, create companies that will serve billions and make billions and serve millions, possibly. Thank you.
May I call on stage Mr. Jatin to give a memento to Ms. Anita Bhargav? So our next session is on story from smartwatch to air cleaner. And I would like to invite our next speakers, Mr. Pavneet Singh Puri and Madhur Mehta, who are the co-founders for Curin Systems. Mr. Pavneet Singh has a dream of going to build 80 towers in India, in Delhi, to purify its air. That's a massive one. Mr. Madhur is an international business graduate from the prestigious Monash University, Melbourne. And he has applied his transhumanist values to create the most advanced products. So welcome to Madhur and Pavneet. Over to you.
He's actually just waiting over there. I don't think there was enough space for both of us to talk. Well, anyways, hello everyone. I would, first of all, thank you for being here till the end. I believe this is the last talk of the evening, so I'll try to keep it brief. I have sat on the other side a decade ago, and I know how it feels to get out of the, the conferences at the end. So just a little about us. We started back in, we forayed into entrepreneurship back in 2011 when we were still in our master's degree. We started with the world's first smartwatch, where we created a device which was completely away from the existing smartphone. It didn't require to be paired in terms of Bluetooth. You could have a SIM card, and it was a first fully Android device. So you could basically make phone calls from it. You could basically do everything. We all started, when we started this, we believed in the transhumanism, which is basically a science which believes that the human race can evolve beyond what we are at right now, physically and mentally, with the use of science and technology on the whole. So we started developing a device. It actually taught us a lot. That was a time that taught us a lot in terms of an entrepreneur, like how to get into the production stage, how to create a mold, what is the actual price of plastic, how do we create a mold to the end goal of giving it to the customer and customer satisfaction. And for an engineer myself, it becomes very difficult, how to sell someone and how to keep them happy and what questions are asked. So that basically taught us how to get into the commercial space. We actually, it's really interesting, ma'am, how she mentioned PayPal, because we actually had, this is the first startup that taught us what a payment gateway is and how we dealt with payment gateways. So we created something, then we had to get it out to the people. In terms of that, we saw PayPal, this was 2012, as the main international payment gateway we were selling to the world. We got instantly popular, and since this was way before the Apple Watch, way before Samsung or anyone, that people were interested, we got 80,000 unique hits on our website in a single day when we were featured on GigaOM and TechCrunch. And usually an e-commerce site looks at a 30% conversion rate, that whatever is being sold, at least if 80, say 100% people are there, at least 30% will buy something. we looked at only 10% and we were only selling one device. So we were looking at something around 8,000 devices that day itself, cost at $250. So we were looking at $2 million that we could have made at the age of 23, and we didn't sell a single device. What happened was PayPal didn't have a crowdfunding model. So basically what back in the day was, if you purchase something of PayPal through as a gateway, you have to show a transfer that you have shipped it and that shipment has been delivered after the first 2 devices. And that hadn't happened because we were still in crowdfunding mode. We were getting the orders, we were going to build it, and we were going to make it after 2 months when we had ample amount of money because we were bootstrapped, and PayPal just shut us down at that point. And so everyone, we could see 80,000 people coming to our website, coming to our shop, but no one can check out. And we can't have another gateway instantly. So all of this taught us how to develop a proper company by the time we were 25 or so, that how to create, like our second startup was actually where we learned from all the mistakes. So this is one thing for the entrepreneurs, for the people still in college, when they go out, like never be disappointed by failures. Because I was there, I understand, I have broken things in my office looking at the figures, and like I've gotten really angry like how to deal with these problems. But yes, failures happen and we move on. We took an early exit from Androidly, and that's when we came into more of a necessity market, which I really believe, like when we moved back, we were in Australia, the air quality over there, the ambient air quality doesn't go over even, it doesn't even reach moderate. It's extremely good. Blame it on like, yes, the population is very less over there, the air conditions are amazing, but like when you come here and you see what we see as like problems, we see as an opportunity. We saw that there is an opportunity here in terms of everything. Like when you look at as a company to what to create, we saw that the first thing that we need to see is where do we have the maximum people? What do people use the most? And earlier it was, okay, they need clothing, food, everything. But like no one was looking at what every human being is leaving behind, and that is waste. And waste in terms of like, may it be like physical garbage, toxic chemicals, whatever, or in terms of air pollution. Everyone needs air and water. In terms of water, you can go like on without clean water for say a week, even till you get parched. But in terms of air, you can't breathe. If you don't breathe for even 10 minutes, you'll have like fatal damages to yourself. So that's when we realized that air is something that we could concentrate on and we could create something around this. And when we looked at products, so it all started when my nephew visited for the first time 5 years back. And basically, 4 years back, sorry, when he was here, like he couldn't breathe. Newborn child, he was 1 year, like barely 1 year old, and he couldn't explain. I got into the market, I bought every single air purifier that I could get my hands on to test it, like to have something better. And we realized that everything that is being sold in the market right now is very different. Like everything that is being sold is more like a global level. It's being picked up from an assembly line and it's sold here. What India needs, and especially Northern India needed, was something heavy duty. What we had to create was something that was not from an assembly line, which was customized for here. So this is back then when we created in 2015, was the first smart air purifier, since we also wanted the IoT inside it. So this purifier, what it does is, even though it has like the highest CADA, which is known as the clean air delivery rate, in terms of like all of its class, of like how much clean air it can generate, we also put our Wi-Fi sensors and Wake on LAN in it. So Wake on LAN, I believe the engineers here would know, but like Wake on LAN, basically what we did was it was paired with the our servers, where you could basically turn on the device from a half sleep mode to turn it on regardless of being on the same network or not. What this was also doing for us was, since we had all the permission, this was sending all the data back from the purifier, wherever the customer was using, to us at what level, which location that this device was on, what level it was turning on at, and after 15 to 20 minutes, what level was it bringing it down to, so showing us what is the use of like whatever filters at what we are using, which grade should we be operating at, and that's how year by year we increases the grade of our HEPA, that is highly effective particulate resistant. The filters are pre-filters, activated carbon. While at the same time, like I'm sorry I'm being very consumer facing, but like these were the challenges that we saw. Like till date, what we still believe is there's a huge problem in explaining to people what air pollution really is. everyone sitting here, at least we know like bare minimum like about what PM, particulate matter is, the different size, the different levels, what problems it causes. When we go into the market, when we're trying to explain to people, we have people coming to us and they are quoting the experts, the doctors, and saying that, oh, if we buy air purifiers or if we buy anything to change our air quality, it's going to ruin our immunity. It's going to hamper our, like, how we breathe. Inside the house, we'll have like extremely good quality, but as soon as we go out and we are in the polluted state, we'll get ill. And they actually quote experts. There are experts that are quoted on terms of plants. Studies from NASA are quoted from back in 1985, and we are told that, oh, we don't want any engineering innovative devices because we'll just fix everything with plants. And we try to explain that the air quality that we are talking about is completely different, but yes, that happens. What we felt right as when we were starting is that air pollution should not just be solved by people who can afford air purifiers. So clean air should not just be like a luxurious item that anyone like in the world should be, anyone especially in India, like where the pollution level is that high, they should be able to get clean air without having to buy a separate device for this home. So right as we were starting with the commercial air purifiers, our initial idea was to create something that was for everyone. So the government could take part in this, and so we could generate enough clean air for the masses. And that's where the Current City Cleaner came in. We didn't talk about it for the first year because we had certain problems with Androidly. When we came out, our media was huge. We didn't have a patent back then on the smartwatch. The first day we got approached by N number of companies saying, why don't you share your research data? Why don't you, and multinationals. And we were silly enough, let's say, like when we were of like age of 21, 22, we shared a lot of our data, a lot of our semiconductor information, a lot of our PCB information. And it actually backfired on us, like when their smartwatches came out with their huge press releases. So what we did here, we waited for our patents, we kept talking to the government officials, and finally we have now broken through when we have, we are starting some of the pilot projects, some through CSR initiatives, some with government initiatives, different. So I'll just like to run through really quickly. So basically about us, we started from where we are. The transhumanism, it's me and my business partner, Mr. Mehta, who's sitting right there, didn't want to come here. So we already know, like, so initially for us, New Delhi is going to be a pilot, is where we'll be, this will be like a pivot point, like which we want to show is we can literally clean the most polluted city, clean other sources. And even though we do understand that this might not be like a huge, huge change, but what we are looking at is as a stepping stone. What we rather do is, even if we go to an area like where there's mountains of garbage in Ghazipur, and if we have just a couple of these devices and we show a little efficiency, this will actually get our foot in the door where we actually want to change of where the pollution is getting created at the source, how we can work together with the government and change all of this just by getting in there. And this was very difficult for us previously when we went and tried to give any policy changes, when we tried to advise on everything. But now at least we have someone that is listening and something that is happening. So basically in terms of technical specifications, for the bare minimum one, we have around 48 fans working in plurality with 9 different chambers of filtration. We have our proprietary tech of increasing how the air with the relative velocity will move through it in a streamlined way, so none of it's being wasted, and everything at the end combined with a number of centrifugal pumps will be in like a jet propulsion way, will be shipped in different directions, especially when you look at the Indo-Gangetic Plains region during, say, from the beginning of September to the end of February, when there is very little air movement, is something that we can really look at, something that we can really, contribute to in terms of like air that is not moving, and something this is like inside the system we are creating something. We'll be cooling the air at the last stage so as to bring it closer to the people instead of letting the hot air literally, rise up and into the, we are using no ionization, no ultraviolet ionization. We personally feel like after all the studies that we have done, all the advisors that we have talked to around the world, it's literally like a tech that should not be like, for us, we won't ever be using, even though it becomes extremely efficient and cheap because there is no replacement of filters or something, but the generation, the byproduct that it's releasing is more harmful than good. So this is something that we made for one of the government organizations. This was literally when they asked us if they could put it in the center of Connaught Place, how much, and everyone asked this flawed question of area, like how much area will your device cover? And our answer always goes into volume. We try to explain to everyone that, air, the measuring SI, the unit of measurement is never in area. Area is literally the ground. Always, air will encompass everything around. So in terms of volume, we'll be doing 32 million cubic meter of air every day with that plurality of fans, whatever we are using in our proprietary tech. In terms of sheer volume, when we talk, that will be clean air for roughly more than 200,000, but we calculated at 75,000 in terms of how much it will reach. And obviously, when works in a network of purifiers, it will obviously work a lot better. It's a 360-degree structure that will be scrubbing the air from all areas and giving it out from the top in like different sections. So this is a literal design, like the aesthetics. We are in talk with different companies. Different companies are asking about different things. We can literally customize it according to their needs. We want everyone that could be involved in companies like who have like, billions or hundreds of millions of dollars of CSR initiatives kept aside, and they want to do something for the air quality, but there is very little opportunity or options that they have in mainstream that they're looking at, and they obviously don't dig too deep. And a lot of these people are now coming to us after all of this, like hoping that like we can provide, and that actually gives us like, obviously there is pressure, but like it gives us an opportunity to like get them involved in something as a good initiative, something like this. So there are a couple of others that are actually already there. Present. There's one out of Europe, which was there during Beijing Olympics. It's actually been turned into a smog alert tower now, because after like a while, it was using ionization. After a while of running it, after 45 days, especially because Chinese government doesn't actually like to share any data, they still said after 45 days of running it, they had generated 30 million cubic meter of air, clean air, which was enough to fill a football field with that air, ionization tower. And that is literally less than what we will be doing in one day. There's another tower that has come up in Xi'an that is on the basis of greenhouse effect, which is basically built up from like a chamber at the bottom, also uses ionization. But again, we use hardcore filtration, and we have the AMC and enough sponsors, ample sponsors to have the all the filters replaced. So I hope I was short enough, and thank you once again. I know you guys will have a lot of questions about this, so anyone who would like to ask anything, we'd be happy to answer. And hopefully we'll be able to make a difference soon enough. Thank you guys.
May I request Mr. Sanjay Bhargav to come on stage and present the memento to Mr. Pavneet? Please come on stage. Thanks, Pavneet. That was an amazing presentation. So while So while we set the stage for our next exciting panel discussion, we have a very important announcement to be made, that is regarding the case study finalists. So we had floated a very interesting case study, and Mr. Piyush will be taking us towards the problem statement and who are the winners. Piyush?
Good evening, everyone. We organized a national level case study competition, out of which around 90 teams registered on a Dare to Complete platform. So out of the rigorous screening, we shortlisted 6 teams in the final round, which were judged by Mrs. Anita Bhaga ma'am, Professor Sachidanand Tripathi sir, and Mr. Pavneet Singh Puri. And the problem statement was regarding the air pollution, that 14 out of 15 cities in India are the world's top most polluted cities. So we gave them a problem statement that what are the reasons that are specific to India, to draw a roadmap of 5 years that how you will cover these challenges and the innovative solutions that the team can propose. The winner is Team Sherlock's of IIT Kanpur. Prize. I would like to call Pradeep sir to give the prize money. The first prize is 10,000 rupees cash prize and with internship opportunities with Current Systems. The runner-up team is Team Karan from Ford School of Management. May I request Pradeep sir again to give the runner-up prize. The prize money is 5,000 with the internship opportunity with Current Systems.
Congratulations to all the winners, and thank you, Piyush. We will also have these case studies featured on a students-only platform called Earth Geeks, where you can see the case studies within a week. Okay, so now we'll get on to the next panel discussion. We are going to talk about citizens, funds, and incubation, and how we can drive the involvement of stakeholders. We know that most of the problems that we have been discussing so far, for that we need all hands to join together, and we need to see the consumer involvement. So may I call upon stage our esteemed panelists. To start with, Mr. Anand Jagannathan, who is a serial investor and serial entrepreneur. Dr. Deshdeep Sahadev from Kazar Technologies. Mr. Amitabh Bandyopadhyay, who is a professor innovation and incubation at IIT Kanpur. Mr. Vinayak Nath from VCATS. I don't think he is here today with us. We have Ms. Anita Bhargav, who's a social activist at Bharosa Club, and Mr. Sanjay Bhargav from Bharosa Club, and Mr. A. Vaidyanathan, who is the investor, professional entrepreneur. Welcome to the stage.
So you've already heard from most of the esteemed panel here. They've all talked about their points of view. Okay, you guys are all ready? So, I think let me kick it off, and then I'd like to actually encourage discussions between you. I think there are a couple of points that I noted. A lot of information about what the problems are, what different solutions are. But I had one simple takeaway. I think Anita mentioned that. The Aadhaar card succeeded because there was one person who was the point person and was focused, had a very high level rank, and was able to execute. And I know actually friends of mine who came from Silicon Valley on a one-year sabbatical and participated in the Aadhaar program and really brought together some bright talent. So if you were to apply this to air pollution, now you can wait for the equivalent of Aadhaar for air pollution at a national level. But at a very simple level, we are here in Kanpur. We had the highest level government authority, who is the commissioner, who was here this morning. And in fact, as he was walking out, I happened to overhear, he was talking, and said, this is really impressive attendance. And he was actually very happy with the number of people who would come here. So if you were to look for and say, why don't you just start with the state of UP, or maybe the broader Kanpur area, and says, is there a czar who can be appointed for air pollution under the auspices of the government authority who was here? Would that solve a problem? Would, at least, because you can then prove it, because maybe solving air pollution at the national level may be very difficult, but maybe we should just focus on air pollution at the local level, especially since he had a person here come here who has pretty broad authority and can actually drive to a decision. So who wants to go first? Maybe Vaidi, since you're talking from the point of view of an entrepreneur, you had actually an interesting question for Dr. Vijay Raghavan. If you're part of the group here and says, you know what, Vaidi, we need your technical help, and there's a czar for UP for air pollution, how do you approach it?
Some bit more as a prelude or a background, the enormity of the problem, while it's been talked all through the day and everybody is aware, it impacts everybody, every level people need to act. That's the reason why it gets lost in the maze. Now, it's a hypothetical, or if we can create a czar, the solution, even then the solution is a little complex, but we can start working around on that. Like for example, in the morning panel when Dr. Tripathi, Sachin took over the issue, or Sachin took the issue of creating it, we started talking. First and foremost, we must understand, accept there is a problem. Second, we need to have a mental attitude in terms of moratorium for the emitters. Because if you say that all the industries are polluting, shut them down, I'm going to give an answer. It's not going to happen overnight. So you need to give a solution. You need to have a roadmap for implementation of the solution. So if you have a czar, what I would say, he needs to be a magnanimous czar with a reasonable time frame of, say, 3 years for Kanpur. It's not going to happen overnight. Then first and foremost is try and put together the relevant stakeholders from the industry, students, school kids, government officials, and the academicians on a common platform to come with a roadmap as to how they can go about it. Next, figure out what, where, when, why. Map the data. Without continuous conterminous data, no solution is going to come. Once you have the data, go about it methodically. Don't go with the iron hand to try and say, I'm going to stop the industry, I'm going to fine everybody. You need to educate, evangelize, go methodically. And of course, from K-12 kids up to from different campuses, we need to get that awareness level. Then comes, once the awareness level is there, implementation becomes easy. Step by step, you get into implementation, sensitize the people, reduce it at the source, then try to ensure that the transmission part of it is reduced, and then the trapment devices, solution, hyper-local, it is possible. Because now you have a data. I'm going to take an extreme example. If you say this tannery is polluting, to say that you're polluting, move out 100 kilometers away is easy answer. But if there is a technology available, incentivize him, subsidize the money he has to pay upfront, give him that equipment with which you know that emission comes down. You're sensitized him, you're not penalized him, you're given him a solution as to how it will happen. So that starts happening. So a complex problem such as this can be solved in a methodical approach. It calls for a disruptive thinking, but it is possible. If you give me the mandate, this is the way I'll go about it.
So Deshdeep, you talked about, in Delhi, you started a company, you're not a subject matter expert, but you applied some ideas. So how would you approach it? I mean, we heard some great technologies here. So
Right.
if you had that pool of technologies and you're a czar, or you're the advisor to the czar,
Well, I think that the technologies can at best help monitor. I mean, those are the healthy technologies. Frankly, as I said, I'm very, very uncomfortable with technologies which depend on the existence of air pollution and which would disappear, and in fact, companies which would completely disappear if the air pollution went away. So air purifiers are really a bit of a problem from that viewpoint, because they provide, in some sense, a local solution. And once the company grows to a considerable size and has a large amount of political clout, then dismantling that company would become very, very difficult. So, and it would be very much in the interest of that company to maintain the air pollution, because the moment the air pollution goes away, the company itself has to close down. Now, that type of a situation is in my sense, in my belief, actually counterproductive. What we will have to do, I mean, what has already been suggested is that once we've identified the sources, we have to now slowly start turning off those emissions. I mean, I haven't really studied the problem to say, it seems, I mean, there's a long list of sources of emission that I've seen in the papers and so on. One of them is the burning of garbage. Now, clearly there must be much better ways of handling the garbage. I mean, they have, on the positive side, they've made it mandatory now to start separating the organic garbage from the inorganic part, from the plastic, etc. And they're going to now start processing at least the organic part. And it's possible that if you start burning that, you are going to, it creates a large amount of smoke if it's imperfect burning and so on. The other part is that the metro has now come into Delhi, all right? And there, wherever we have a source of electrical power for the metro, that's where the pollution is going to be. If we use the right sources there, then at least it's contained. And I mean, I like the idea where if we retrofit a lot of the exhaust pipes of cars and so on, we control the pollution there. I mean, I'd have to study exactly how these Western countries are actually reducing the amount of pollution and of emissions from the cars. But it's not obvious to me that they have actually succeeded, because there was this scandal with Volkswagen. So it's possible that they have actually, even in countries like Germany, they have imposed certain standards which these companies are not being able to stick to. And they're having to resort to all forms of deception in order to keep the whole thing going. So perhaps, I mean, personally, I would very much like to switch to public transport, and I would like the whole psyche to switch to that. I mean, we start using the metro, very few people actually use cars and so on, and we just make a very good public transport system. The US has not been able to develop a good public transport. It's probably one of the most primitive public transport systems. It's extremely expensive, and it hasn't developed precisely because of the automobile industry, which has never allowed it to develop.
sure, the vested interest.
The vested interest. So I'm very worried about that. And so now that's the part that it is finally going to be a socio-political problem.
But Anita, from your own experience, you said you were very successful in getting 300 people mobilized to clean up Delhi, and very soon it became dirty again.
Yes.
So wouldn't you have a counter argument to Deshdeep where saying that by removing air pollution, there's a disincentive for the purifier companies to lose business because they're always going to be needed because it's not going to go away. Air pollution is going to come back. And so I don't think, from your perspective, do you think there's a danger that the companies like the air purifier companies are desensitized when to have air pollution removed?
I actually believe that is the case. I actually believe that that is the case. There's conflict of interest and stuff like that. But I also believe that if you have a very good rock star variety czar, okay, so, and that czar should not be necessarily a bureaucrat. In fact, maybe it's better if he's not a bureaucrat. And that czar is actually asked to deliver these outcomes and is asked to leave if he does not deliver, because for missions of national importance or state importance, these are really, really critical jobs. Now, if you have a rockstar CEO kind of person over there in that role, he's going to figure these solutions, and one of the things is community participation. So, from my experience, people are not bad. Some people are not so great, but 80% of the people are pretty good, and they want the city, the state, the country to be better. It's just that you have to sell them the thing properly, make it easy for them to comply. We've seen cases of this with the Commonwealth Games in Delhi. So what had happened was, and even odd even in Delhi. So during the Commonwealth Games, one lane on many of the roads was blocked, and nobody could travel on those, could use those lanes. Everybody complied because the fines were very high. Similarly, the same thing happened for odd even. The fine was very high, people complied. In Indore, what has happened is, Indore, as you know, was voted the cleanest city, and there was a really good municipal commissioner who actually devised a complete plan from how this waste was going to be collected, and citizen participation, and there was some tune that was going on all over Indore ko number one banana hai, something or the other, to create an Indore pride. So I think these things are very doable, and we just have to think of complete holistic plan. People will do it. Industry will cooperate and things, and the fines need to be really heavy.
So Sanjeev, can you convince Elon Musk to be the rock star?
I don't think he'll come to India because the country is not very enabling at this point in time.
But you've been around, you moved from the USA back to here.
Yeah.
Who do you suggest? Take a guess, and who do you suggest as a
No,
rock star?
so, so first of all, I think, I'm pretty amazed by the discussion today and the power that the IIT Kanpur Alumni Association has in terms of mobilizing people, right? And like you got the principal advisor to the PM there, and he's an, alumni and friends, you've gone to school with him and so on. So now building upon this, I think the missing link is really the czar, right? But like you find the czar, like you do a search for a CEO, right? You've got to define and find that person. Now, I would tend to believe that someone who has worked on habitat, because clean air is not, it's just one part of habitat, right? So there is sewage, there is the entire city, there is a monetization plan for the city, right? Should Kanpur have a lot of tourists? Should the what about jobs in Kanpur? And so on. So if you just look at clean air in isolation, and it's not part of what is, I think, smart city, right? I think you would be doing a disservice. But and therefore, if you have a czar for the smart city, now, so then I would think that if there was a search and you looked at people who were like born in Kanpur or love Kanpur or have some identification with Kanpur, and they've done amazing things in the world, I'm sure you'll find someone. I don't know who that person is, right off the top of my head. But if you actually search for that person, you will find that person. Then the question is convincing them, right? So I came back to India because I attended a Pravasi Bharati conference, and India was shining. And, of course, my parents were growing old. And, so there were various factors. I could have lived anywhere in the world. But there was this little pull to come back to India because, I'd done stuff in Silicon Valley. So I'm sure there are individuals like that. Not necessarily outside India. There may be. So one of the things where I slightly disagree from Anita, the person could be a bureaucrat. It doesn't have to be. Like there was a person called Mr. Rao, I think in Surat, who I think made Surat very good or whatever. But the point is that the person has to be driven. It has to be a passion. It has to be a burning desire. I mean, the person has to think, like I worked with Elon and, I was there with, so he had sold a company for $300 million in cash at the age of 27. Okay. He had no reason to work, but he worked harder than any of us. He was there 16 hours a day. I worked 100-hour work weeks in the first 3 months I was with PayPal, and so on, because we had a dream, and we were passionate about it. So those are some of the other aspect is that if you have a CEO type person, so if I take myself, I'm a product type person. I'm not a CEO type person. Now in finance or say eliminating poverty, I could give like fantastic ideas and maybe those solutions are great, okay? But I'm not the czar. I would be not a great czar, right? Because that requires a different skill. It requires a skill of listening to people, getting stakeholders to work together, being a CEO, solving very different problems. Like say, maybe the Korean solution is good, maybe PAX is good, maybe something else is good, maybe. But one other thing, and I would love to actually, after this, at dinner or maybe later, because we are here for the night, we are leaving early in the morning. If there's a small group of people who want to brainstorm a little bit on this, on metros, how you achieve them, what happened, it might be an interesting thing. At least it'll leave you with some inputs. Maybe it's not the answer. But the thing what I believe is that platforms are going to be the future. So like the internet revolution was what made me leave Citibank and join PayPal. I took like an 85% pay cut, but good amount of stock, so it worked out well. But the basic thing was I believed that the internet would be a revolution. I now believe that platforms will be the revolution. And the platforms will be a bigger revolution than the internet. Now, if you're building a platform, and let's say you come to Kanpur, and let's say it's a habitat platform, not just a clean air platform, but it does like various things, citizens, property tax, monetization, whatever, right?